Leon was an insignificant shut-in loser who kept gaming until his brain cells literally got fried. His entire life suddenly changed when he got isekai'd into the Matrix for feminists and decided to escape by becoming an overpowered harem lord. It all started on the night he played a popular dating game about a group of royal jocks that made BTS look like a dumpster fire. The fact that the baddies in the game had all the power made no sense to him, but he kept playing despite having huge duffel bags under his eyes. He eventually got a text from his sister, who was on vacation after blackmailing him to play the game for her so she wouldn't have to sit through the boring bits. As he spent hours getting through the complicated lives of the MCs and all the technicalities that came with their magical feminist world, he started wishing for someone to put him out of his misery. Days later, he finally got to the end of the game and realized that he had eaten nothing throughout the entire week, so he stumbled his way out to get to the grocery store. Unfortunately, the lack of food and endless hours of gaming had deep-fried his last remaining brain cells and caused him to fall down a flight of stairs, essentially booking him a first-class ticket to his ancestors. Moments later, he woke up in a field and thought he was in heaven until he realized that he was in the body of an NPC named Leon and went home, where his dad, Balkis, and mother, Luce, were waiting to scold him. A washed-up Mylth named Zola then reminded Balkis that he would be nothing if she had not married him and told him to keep Leon's peasant vibes away from her kids. That night, Leon asked Nick why they were not allowed to stay in the main house like the other kids, so Nick reminded him that guys were usually worthless in their world. He then told Leon to focus on his studies so he could find a wife in the academy, and that immediately reminded him of the game. As Nick explained things to him in more detail, he remembered everything about the dating sim and saw the Academy's logo on the book Nick was reading, causing him to spiral into a dark depression. 10 years later, Leon had settled into his life as a meaningless NPC and abandoned all the secrets he knew about the game world to enjoy a farm boy's life. That was until he found out about a marriage Zola had arranged between him and a noble who looked like she was a year away from needing a wheelchair. He asked about the plan for him to find a wife in the academy, but Zola said his education would cost money they didn't have. Balkis also admitted to the marriage being the best option for him, but he still refused, so Zola said he never even had a choice in the matter. One look at the expression on her face was enough for him to predict the evil plans she had for him, but then he remembered buying a ship while playing the game and thought it would be a good way to get money for the academy. He then went out to have one last chat with his dad before borrowing a boat and running away. During his journey, he ran into an airfish and blew it up to gain magic points and experience for the rest of the trip. He eventually found a transport ring under a body of water and hovered above it to get to the ship, but he suddenly got sucked into a tornado, and the boat got destroyed. Moments later, he landed in a forest and found the abandoned building where the ship was stored, so he went in to find it. After smoking a sentry robot left to guard the place, he found 2 expired scientists and used one of their key cards to gain entry into storage into where the ship had been stashed. Once he got into the ship, he headed straight for the control room, but a budget-friendly Decepticon was waiting to take him out for intruding. He tried the access card, but the robot scanned its data and knew it didn't belong to him, so it started attacking. Leon then tossed an EMP to fry its motherboard, but that only made it activate its defense protocol. After testing out the shield with his gun, Leon tossed a regular grenade and thought he had definitely destroyed it, but the robot survived and grabbed him to figure out why he wasn't only using magic weapons like the other humans in the game world. Leon kept running his mouth to piss the robot off, and it worked because it slowly started to crush his insides so he could feel every bit of the pain. Despite having his ribs turned to mashed potatoes, Leon pulled out his sword and blasted it into the robot's head, causing it to short-circuit and blow up. He then dragged himself to the control panel and gained access to the ship's AI by giving it the owner's command he got after buying it. After getting registered as its master, he thought about his sister with the strength he had left and hoped he would get a much better isekai before passing out. 3 months later, Zola told his dad to accept that he had probably become nothing but a sad heap of bones, but they suddenly heard a loud engine and went to take a look. Leon had returned with the AI named Lucian and a boatload of jewels that he used to get out of the arranged marriage before cooking up his plan to find a wife who didn't need dentures. The next day, Lucian watched as he watered a patch of flowers and kept fantasizing about the look on Zola's face. He then took a good look at the island he had discovered and got started with the building so he could turn it into a baronetcy by finding a good wife at the academy. Those plans were dashed once his dad handed him a declaration naming him as a baron. which meant he had to marry a lady ranked as high as Zola. Days later, he got to the academy and took in the beauty of its architecture before seeing that his fellow men were truly nothing but livestock to the noble baddies of the kingdom. Just then, he sensed pure aura and watched as the prince came in with his squad of Sigma Chads, before also seeing a hottie named Angelica, who was far too priceless for a backwater thief like him. Thankfully, he wanted nothing to do with the overly extravagant life of the nobles and went for the opening ceremony. But on his way out moments later, he heard Prince Julius getting slapped by a hot midget named Marie that he didn't recognize from the game. While Julius was getting his buttons flipped by the blatant disrespect, Leon was wondering why Marie was playing out someone else's role in the game. Afterwards, he went to his dorm room to think about it, but Lucian interrupted to tell him how the rest of the game world was slowly reverting to the caveman era. Leon then went on to finish reading up on the art of setting up tea parties and met up with his fellow NPCs Daniel and Raymond. They had unfortunately realized that even the lowest ranked girls wanted nothing to do with their broke, worthless personalities and hoped their tea party skills would make a difference. Just then, they saw how shameless the girls were towards Julius. Leon tried to hide his jealousy, but then Angelica showed up to pull Julius aside, and that got him interested. Just as Julius told her to stop trying to boss him around, Marie asked why he called her out, so he invited her to his tea party. Angelica immediately pointed out that she was too broke to even breathe the same air as him, but Julius clapped back by saying their arranged marriage didn't give her any right to interfere with his daily life. He then went on to assure Marie that she was welcome at his party, and her weird excitement got Leon a lot more curious because she wasn't a part of the game's original characters. Later on, he attended a class on tea parties but paid little attention, so Lucas made him stand and eventually brought him out for a personal lesson. Moments later, he realized his mistake and begged Lucas to teach him more about the art of finding love with tea. After the class, he managed to put together his first tea party, and Lucian commended him on not being a total waste of existence. Just then, his date arrived, and he felt optimistic about his chances with her until he saw that she brought her snot-faced friends, who immediately went to town on his treats and left to find the next desperate of Taku to swindle. After finding hope in Lucas's teachings, Leon heard some noise in the hallways and saw a group of girls bullying Olivia, the protagonist he had been searching for. He initially considered minding his business to preserve his boring life as an NPC, but her goddess-level face card did a number on him, so he went to offer her some tea. Moments later, she was stuffing her face with his snacks and thanked him for being so kind, causing him to regret hating her so much when he first played the game. He then asked why such a beauty was getting bullied, so she explained that she was actually a commoner and didn't really know anything about the power struggle in an academy packed with royalty. He then realized that she was just a hottie with an extremely low IQ point, so he promised to help, and she nearly blinded him with her purity while trying to say thank you. Moments later, he took her to see his sister Jenna, who absolutely hated his guts and only put up with him because he had become rich. After hearing about Olivia's problems, she suggested getting close to the most powerful girl in the academy by buying off her closest friend. The thought of spending her entire year's allowance on high-priced snacks terrified her, but Leon offered to take care of it, and she promised to pay it back. Later that day, Olivia finally got to meet Angelica, who thought the plan to get a foot in the door by buying out her closest supporter was smart. After making her subordinates leave, she gave Olivia permission to join her girl squad, and asked how she came up with the plan, so Olivia told her about Leon. She immediately remembered that he was the rumored brokey who got an island all for himself, and hoped he was smart enough to know the difference between a potential wife and a leech who would use him for his riches. The next day, Leon got upset after realizing that his friends had ditched exploration class, which meant he had to deal with watching Julius' group of alphas on his own. To make matters worse, he could tell that the rest of their classmates saw him and Olivia as the human shields that would take on the hardest part of the dungeon quest. Just then, they heard Angelica starting another argument with Julius over the preferential treatment he was giving Marie. Leon then asked Olivia if she knew anything about her, but all she could remember was that Marie was also a commoner who had been bullied up until the time she started getting close to Julius. Angelica kept trying to get Marie away from Julius until Jilk and Greg told her to stop acting like a shameless simp and started heading inside the dungeon with Julius. Moments later, Olivia found a crystal and tried to talk about it with Leon, but his social battery was already on red, so he went on to avoid a conversation and ended up getting them both surrounded by a group of mutant fire ants. He immediately pulled out a sword Lucian had made him and tore through the ants in an instant. But another creature suddenly attacked and bit into his arm before he could finish it off. Just then, a new wave of monster ants showed up, but Julius and his group of high school musical cornballs showed up to save the day. After they took turns blowing up the ants, Julius got hurt, so Marie used healing magic to treat his wounds. Angelica then pushed her aside to help him instead, but he stopped her and took Marie by the hand before leaving. While Angelica was trying to figure out what Marie had done to her Prince Charming, Olivia noticed the injury Leon got from the fight and used healing magic to take care of it. She then told him about her magic, which was the main reason she wanted to study at the academy, and he realized that being with her wasn't so bad. But he also couldn't shake off the feeling that Marie was up to something. The next day, 3 third years torched Marie's books, but Julius found them later on and asked Angelica about it. She denied having anything to do with it, but Julius said the girls they caught claimed to be working for her. She kept trying to defend herself, but he got tired of listening and told her to never be around him again. At the time, Leon's friends had just heard that the 2 girls who were the only ones nice enough to put up with their lack of self-respect had just gotten engaged. After accepting that they now had to settle for the ugly, ruthless baddies left in the academy, they asked Leon if he had gotten lucky with any of the girls, but he was in a situation far worse than theirs. They immediately changed the topic to the recent situation with Marie, and that got Leon curious, so he met up with Olivia to ask if she had seen anything weird recently. Olivia then told him that she once saw Marie sitting alone and clearly upset about something. She tried asking questions, but Marie got pissed and said something about hating girls like her. Before he could wrap his head around it, Leon heard someone in the shelves, so he went to check it out with Olivia and saw Marie exchanging mouth juices with Brad. On her way back to the dorms after eating his face off, Julius and Jill called her aside to ask if she had a personal slave. She played the cute innocent card again, so they both decided to get one for her and escorted her to the dorm. Meanwhile, Angelica's girls had already heard of the plan to get Marie a personal slave and wanted to know if she had any plans to stop Julius, but Angelica made them leave so she could deal with her emotions. That night, Jenna barged into Leon's room screaming. He tried to ignore her, but she mentioned Marie's name and got his attention. Moments later, she finished talking to him about the current state of things with Marie and asked if he had anything to do with Angelica's attempts to separate her from Julius. After he said it was none of his business, Jenna told him to keep it that way to avoid getting on the prince's bad side and left. The next day, Julius met Marie at a party and asked why she wasn't wearing a dress, so she reminded him of her chronic poverty, and he promised to get her set up with the best stylist in all the land. As they talked, Angelica was hoping Julius would notice her mega melons. Meanwhile, Leon was with his boys, hoping they could finally find someone that would give them a chance. Moments later, they got their hearts shattered, and the girls went a step ahead by making their demi-human servant assault all 3 of them for even thinking they had a shot. The next moment, Olivia showed up to tell Leon about an argument between Angelica and Julius over Marie's lack of morals. While Olivia was filling Leon in on the juicy details, Angelica was trying her hardest to stop Julius from being a simp. When she finally revealed that Marie was involved with all the guys on his squad, they all confessed to actually knowing and took turns claiming to be the one with the most love for her. After Julius stopped them to say that his love was the strongest, Angelica realized that his brain was deep in Marie's plot and asked if he was planning to make things official with her. Once he revealed his intent to take their relationship to the next level, Angelica tossed her glove at Marie to signal the ceremonial duel challenge. Before Marie could even speak, Julius and his squad of brain-dead simps accepted the challenge and offered to fight for her. Things quickly went south for Angelica because none of the guys were willing to risk their lives by going against Julius. Leon could already predict that Angelica would likely end up being forced to settle into life as a peasant's wife in some backwater farmland and started considering getting involved. Just as she was about to accept her defeat, he walked out and offered to be her champion by taking on Julius and his boys. Angelica then said Marie had to stay away from Julius if Leon could win, while she would do the same if Leon lost the duel. Leon suggested having the duel with their suits at the arena, but Chris asked if he was really ready for such a dangerous matchup. Greg also thought he had taken too much nose candy and gave him a chance to back down, but Leon asked if they were all too scared that their little simp group would get exposed for actually being weaklings. A couple more minutes of trash talk was enough for Julius to accept his challenge, but Leon still threw the glove at him to get him pissed. Later that day, he found his room vandalized and Lucian showed him that the students had made his friends do it to discourage him. After Lucian also showed him that they were already placing bets, with practically all of them going to Julius, Leon went to see Angelica, and she immediately told him to forfeit the duel. When he refused, she realized that he was a lot crazier than she expected and asked why he even wanted to fight Julius so much. He then told her how frustrating the constant rejection from girls had been and said he just wanted to take his anger out on the dollar store BTS afterwards. He got suited up for the duel, and Olivia wished him luck before he went into the arena, where Julius and his boys were waiting with their wannabe Power Rangers suits. While pissing off the crowd, Leon saw that Daniel and Raymond were the only ones betting on him, so he got serious and summoned his armor. However, the entire student body started laughing at what they all thought was a tin can from ancient times. While everyone else couldn't stop clowning Leon for trying to fight with a transformer from the 19th century, Olivia was clueless as to why they found it funny, so Angelica explained that the suit was likely a lost item that wouldn't be able to keep up with the updated specs on modern suits. Leon, on the other hand, couldn't care less and hopped in before getting briefed on the suit's functionality by Lucian. By then, Brad had also gotten into his suit and wasted no time roasting Leon again, but after looking through Brad's stats to make sure they were the same as when he played the game, Leon told him to stop yapping so they could get down to business. He then tried to deploy a sword, but he got a shovel instead, and Lucian reminded him that it was the only thing close to a weapon he had stored in the suit. Everyone, including Brad, thought he was making a mockery of the duel, but he had no alternative, so the referee called out the rules and gave them permission to clap each other. Brad immediately activated his attack drones and charged in, but Leon easily dodged him and all his attacks at once before using a single swing of the shovel to cut his lights off. After a brief moment of shock, the referees checked on Brad to be sure he was actually knocked out and gave Leon the win. He was sad to see that no one cheered for his win until Lucas got up to applaud him. Olivia was also excited to see him win, but Angelica took a minute to process the shock before feeling optimistic about his chances. While Julius and Jill were trying to figure out how Leon's suit was so strong, Greg was already hyped up and immediately got suited to take him down. One quick look at Greg's suit was enough for Leon to see that he actually had combat experience and a loud mouth to match his ego. Once the referees gave the signal, Greg went on the offense and got excited to show off his skills, but Leon quickly grew tired of letting him play around and turned the tables with an even stronger barrage of slashes. Another minute of smacking sent Greg and his tin can crashing down, but he refused to give up, so Leon took the suit apart piece by piece. Even after tearing out the control section of the suit, Greg got out and kept running his mouth, so Leon stood back while he attacked with a metal beam until the referee told him to take his pathetic rice cakes out of the arena. The students were even more shocked than before and couldn't utter a single word, but Olivia thought Leon was going overboard by insulting Greg and suggested making him apologize later on. After Angelica said it would only bruise Greg's ego, Chris came out in his suit and promised to take Leon seriously. Once they got the signal, Leon took a huge step back and deployed drones to keep Chris busy so he wouldn't have to deal with another series of weak slashing. He also used that as an opportunity to roast Chris and got him pissed, so he charged in with his sword, but Leon caught it and shattered the sword with his grip. Chris immediately admitted defeat, but Leon still wanted to rub it in and caused him to feel a level of despair that would leave him scarred for life. The other students had gone from being shocked to genuinely feeling worried, and Jill instinctively knew that he had to do something to tip the scales. Afterward, Leon went to get some air, and Angelica was keeping an eye on the suit with Olivia, but Jenna suddenly showed up to give them some information while Jill watched from their side of the arena. Moments later, they both found Leon coming out of the men's room and asked if he was okay because Jenna claimed she was worried about his health. The thought of his verbally abusive sister suddenly caring for him didn't feel right, but he only told them not to worry and started heading out. Lucian then told him that Jenna had installed explosives on his suit with help from Jilk, but Leon knew it was nothing to worry about and got in to continue the duel. Jilk was already in his suit by then and commended him before receiving the signal and taking a step back to kick up a dust cloud for his attack. He started with an armor-piercing round and couldn't believe his eyes when Leon survived, but he still had the bomb and used the magic trigger to activate it. Both he and Jenna thought Leon was finally taken out, but when the dust settled, Leon was already hovering over him and pushed him back with an attack. Jilk then switched to making threats, but Leon only found them funny and reminded him that his nobility could be revoked for going that far during a duel. Jill claimed it was pointless since he couldn't prove it, but Lucian had made a recording and played it back to scare him. Jill suddenly charged in again to take him down, but Leon had gotten tired of toying with him and slapped him out of the sky. Seeing Jill get defeated caused Marie to boil over, but she kept her true feelings hidden to hear Julius yap about how his suit was the strongest in the entire kingdom. As he turned to head out, she wished him luck but secretly wanted to drop a grenade inside Leon's suit to stop him from messing up her new life in the game. Moments later, Julius came out in his suit and got all the students cheering for his victory. After he commended Leon on making it past the others, Leon asked for his thoughts on Olivia, but Julius claimed he barely knew who she was. Leon then got ready for the fight, but the loud screams of support for Julius drowned out his own thoughts, so he made Lucian scan Julius for any abnormalities on his suit before charging in. As they both kept trying to overpower each other, Angelica couldn't stop herself from worrying, while Mary desperately hoped that Julius wasn't all bark and no bite. Leon could sense that Angelica truly loved him and asked if he was just trying to ignore the obvious, but Julius claimed that she was just like all the other girls who only wanted him for the status, while Marie wanted him for who he really was. Hearing that made Leon pissed, so he promised to take him out in a way that would make the other fights look like a warm-up, but Julius said he would rather die than live in a world without Marie. Tears of heartbreak suddenly started running down Angelica's face as she realized that Julius was too far gone, but Olivia got up to tell them all that what Angelica felt for Julius was true love. Once again, Julius started rambling on about how his love for Marie was superior and told Angelica to never approach him again before turning to finish the fight. Leon continued with the trash talk, but this time he kept calling Julius a fraud who was putting up a facade of bravery while actually being a weak cornball who was apparently too blind to see that Marie was nothing but 4 feet of pure dark energy. When Julius charged in to finish him off, Leon grabbed his arms and told him that going against Angelica could harm his shot at becoming king in the future, but Julius pulled back and said being king was not as important as the love he had for Marie. Leon responded by immediately charging up his hand cannon for a blast that pulverized his suit and left him paralyzed in pain. Moments later, he got out of the suit and met up with Olivia, who was worried about the fact that he had become the most hated person in the academy. While they were talking, Angelica had gone to see Julius, and as usual, he wanted absolutely nothing to do with her. She kept persisting in her love for him, so he asked if she even knew his favorite meal. She instinctively mentioned a dish he always ate in the palace, but he said it was actually a special kebab he tried after his first successful attempt to sneak out. He went on to say that Marie already knew about it and even took him out to get some recently before making it clear to Angelica that he would never be able to love her. She finally accepted the harsh reality and promised to keep wishing him a good life before leaving him to rest. Later that day, Leon went to see Vincent Gilbert to ask for help in keeping his family out of any negative effects his actions against Julius would bring. He also offered a portion of his wealth and gave up his status as a knight, so Vince agreed to do his best as Angelica's father and also asked for a favor to help her get over being rejected. Shortly after that, Angelica was on Leon's ship with Olivia, pissed at herself for being the reason why he had to leave the academy. But Olivia told her not to take all the blame because Leon had been planning to play the villain all along. Later on, Balkis was trying to understand how Leon had already caused so much damage to the family name, but Zola was especially pissed about everything and slapped the shit out of him for spawning such a worthless son. Just then, Angelica came in and introduced herself to Zola, instantly transforming her anger into regret as she realized that Leon had brought home a member of the Redgrave family. After she left, he took the girls to his island and showed them around before they went to get their plots waxed in his bath. While talking with Olivia, Angelica realized that she had been carrying 2 large milkers around and asked if Leon had ever tried anything cultured with her. Olivia found it funny because she actually thought he had feelings for Angelica instead, but she was convinced that he saw her as an obsessive creep. After the bath, they kept playing with each other's silky smooth skin while Leon enjoyed the show until they included him in their girl talk. Angelica was still beating herself up over everything that happened and didn't like the fact that she had been plotting revenge against Marie ever since, but Leon thought there was nothing wrong with it and even had the perfect revenge plan to help out. She was excited to hear the plan despite Olivia's pleas against it, but his idea was for her to focus on improving herself instead of obsessing over someone else. At the time, Marie had just learned that Julius and his boys got disowned for being a bunch of failures. While she was having an existential crisis, they were excited to finally get to focus all their attention on loving her. Days later, a messenger paid Balkis and Leon a visit to tell them about a promotion he was getting for standing against Julius. Instead of getting banished and having the entire kingdom against him, Leon was brought to Julius' parents and awarded the title of knight before being reinstated in the academy. Afterward, he went back and quickly got used to still being the most hated guy on campus, but Olivia and Angelica offered to spend the day with him, and that made his miserable life seem a lot less painful. Days later, festival preparation just kicked off in the academy, and Leon was giving orders to his friends for the perfect cafe setup. Just then, Olivia showed up to get his opinion on her maid outfit, and Angelica was also curious to know why it was specifically designed to make their melons pop. While they both gave each other compliments and couldn't seem to stop manhandling each other's plots, Leon was cursing the gods of the game for not letting NPCs find love. The girls kept drooling over each other until Jenna barged in and demanded an audience with Leon. After initially threatening her, he decided to hear her out, so she told him about a disagreement with a friend and asked for his help settling it. He could already tell that it was about a rich noble her friend was trying to steal from her, but she turned out to be the boyfriend thief, so he told her to go fix her issues on her own. She asked if he could simply threaten the friend with his powers, and Olivia tried suggesting otherwise, but Jenna snapped at her for trying to give an opinion. Leon immediately defended her, and Angelica also threatened to turn Jenna into a pretzel, so she left, and Olivia thanked them both for standing up for her. The next moment, his friends told them that Julius and his dollar store BTS group had opened a cafe right next door. They went to check it out and got blown away by the excessive aura leaking out of Julius as the girls crowded to get a taste of his snacks. The former prince sensed their envy and went over to rub his chiseled jawline in Leon's face before saying that their cafe stood no chance against his. Leon then decided to follow him back so they could take a look, and felt true terror when they saw the level of luxury he had set up for a simple cafe. Brad and Chris were also there to remind Leon that having a little money was not enough to get rid of his brokey mentality. Olivia, on the other hand, was more concerned about the fact that they were charging $100 for a cup of tea, so they explained that it was all Marie's idea. Just then, the fun-sized harem queen revealed herself and said the pricing was because Julius and his boys were all still from royal families, which meant they could not serve tea at the same price as peasants. Leon found her delusions funny and reminded her that they were technically just a bunch of disowned failures who were probably burning through their savings to keep up with skincare. After an intense stare down, Marie promised to mop the floor with his cafe, and he swore to make Lucas proud by defeating her yet again. Later on, Olivia went to promote the cafe to some of the girls on campus, but they all took turns roasting her for thinking she was good enough to talk to them simply because Leon had chosen to keep her around. After they left, a girl named Carla introduced herself and said she was actually excited to see the cafe. The next day, Leon gave them a pep talk right as the festival officially started. Olivia was excited to serve tea with Angelica, but she suddenly got summoned to the executive council. Turns out it was just Queen Mylene, Julius's smoking hot mom, who wanted to know how Angelica was doing and also asked for an introduction to Leon. She blamed Julius for being a dust-brained nutcase and apologized to Angelica for all the embarrassment she had endured for him. Meanwhile, Leon and the others were trying to figure out why every girl on campus was comfortable with the idea of spending a fortune on tea. Just then, a rich snob named Stephanie showed up with her servants and demanded some from him. Moments later, Mylene begged Angelica for her help to tease Leon a little, but when they opened the door, they found him soaked in tea while Stephanie yelled about his poor service and ordered a fresh cup. After stopping Olivia from interfering, he reached down to get the broken cup, but Stephanie then decided to use his head as a foot mat. She kept yelling about how he had cost her the money she bet on the duel until Angelica grabbed her by the shirt and told her to stop. Stephanie reminded her that their families were rivals and kept running her mouth, so Olivia stepped in and tried to resolve the issue with a gentle approach. Unfortunately, Stephanie was also capable of committing murder with her words and wasted no time using the most diabolical insults to remind Olivia that she was still just a worthless commoner. By then, Leon had started getting pissed and told Stephanie to shut the hell up, but she responded by making one of her slaves slap the shit out of him. Mylene immediately shunned Stephanie and told her to act like a noble, but the female Sasquatch was only starting and decided to continue with Mylene instead. Just then, they sensed a dark energy and saw that Leon had gone full psycho. Before Angelica could do anything to calm him, he started shattering the job ones of Stephanie's slaves and stacked their bodies together when he finished. He then told Stephanie who Mylene really was since she was clearly too stupid to see past the disguise, and got ready to take out the rest of his anger on her. Mylene tried to stop him, but Angelica already knew that only one person could do that, so she called Lucas, and his god-level aura turned Leon from alpha wolf to beta puppy. Afterwards, he apologized to Mylene, and she made him sit so she could voice her complaints over the duel he had with Julius. She wanted to know if he had considered the fact that absolutely everyone in the royal family would hate him, but he couldn't care less, and she felt better knowing that he was prepared for anything. She then explained that the real reason she came was to create some memories in the academy because she didn't attend one. The entire time, her beauty was slowly melting away his brain cells, but he managed to keep himself in order and went on to propose. Mylene got shy and reminded him that she was a mother, but Leon was certain of his love and knew she would treat him much better than the narcissistic baddies in the academy. Just as he was putting the finishing touches on his pickup lines, he got his skull cracked by a brutal strike and saw Julius boiling with rage. Mylene tried to calm him down, but the idea of calling Leon daddy terrified him, so he punched the shameless simp and took Mylene away. Moments later, she was at his cafe demanding to see Marie, who was hiding behind the blinds to avoid her. Julius refused to introduce her because he already knew Mylene hated her guts. But things quickly went south when Mylene started asking questions about the scam he was pulling on the other girls by selling Dave biscuits and almost expired tea at insanely high prices. While the boys and Marie were getting close to shitting themselves, Leon was at his cafe wondering why he didn't pick up Mylene sooner. Just then, Carla came in and introduced herself before Olivia revealed that she had asked to meet Leon. He got curious to know why she would specifically want to see him, so she got on her knees and begged him to save her family. Back at his dorm that evening, Lucien told him to ignore Carla's request, but Leon said it would be a bad look for Olivia because she had promised Carla the audience with him. At the cafe the next day, he and the boys noticed the tension between Angelica and Olivia. They knew it was definitely because of what Stephanie said about the way Angelica once treated commoners, so Leon decided to give them a break so they could talk it out. Daniel and Raymond were more concerned about their low income, but Leon said the festival's final event would make things better for them. Afterwards, Angelica and Olivia joined the other students to see the lineup for bike racing. Angelica told her about Jilk's skill that was currently unmatched, and Olivia curiously asked if Leon would join the race, but they both already knew that he would most definitely be making bets instead. After they left, Marie got excited to watch Jilk win because his success meant they could finally afford a decent lifestyle. Leon was watching the race and got insanely excited to keep racking wins. The girls found him moments later and suggested being a little more productive with his money, but he went even crazier and managed to avoid bankruptcy. As they watched the race together, Jilk started getting attacked by some of the other racers, and Angelica already knew that they were working for a girl named Clarice. Despite their attempts to stop Jilk, he managed to escape with a loop and finish in first place, but he also got severely injured and had to be attended to. Moments later, Marie was by his bed crying over losing her shot at getting the prize money, and Angelica was trying to figure out who would act as a substitute for Jilk. Just then, Clarice came in, admitted to being behind the attacks, and reminded Jilk that it was all because he rejected her. Leon found her temper tantrum and abandonment issues funny, but Olivia scolded him for being so nonchalant, causing him to unlock a new level of cultured obsession. By then, Angelica had started arguing with Clarice, who was more than happy to clap back until one of her slaves reminded her that Angelica's family could murk her without leaving a single trace of her existence behind. After threatening to make Jilk pay for dumping her, she left, and they all realized that someone had to take Jilk's place in the race. Marie immediately picked out Leon and claimed that she was doing Angelica a favor because not finding a substitute despite being a part of the executive council would be a bad look for her. She told Leon not to bother putting himself through something else just to save her, but he knew that leaving her out to dry would cause her dad to take off his head. So he decided to take Jilk's place and told the Japanese Green Goblin to be grateful. After he and Lucien got the bike prepped to race, the top-ranked rider named Dan showed up to say his efforts would be futile. Leon then asked if he was also being forced to act up by Clarice, but Dan said she was actually really good to her followers. She apparently had a racetrack in her family's estate and used it to help Jilk get good at racing, while Dan and the other brokies watched with jealousy. He then explained that her recent changes were because Jilk dumped her with a note, so Leon admitted to Jilk being an ass. He then told Dan that they both had a shared hatred for the nobles and asked for a truce, but Dan still promised to smoke him and left to get ready. So Leon told Luxian to double everything they installed on the bike to ensure his success. Moments later, he joined the other racers on the track before the signal went off, but he had barely made it past a quarter of the first lap when every other racer started trying to take him out. He realized that they were just hating as usual and got his lick back by knocking them out one after the other. The girls were trying to make sense of all the violence when Stephanie showed up to run her mouth again. When she started blaming Angelica for being behind her own family's failures, Angelica suggested visiting a therapist and was about to throw hands, but Olivia stopped her and told Stephanie to stop blaming Angelica for her problems. Stephanie then reminded her that Angelica wouldn't have known about her existence if not for Leon, and Angelica couldn't think of a way to clap back, causing Olivia to run off as she thought it must be true. Stephanie kept running her mouth despite all the drama she had already caused, so Angelica slapped some of her teeth out and forced her down so they could finally settle things with their fists. Back on the racetrack, Leon had intentionally slowed his bike down to let all the racers get ahead. Once the last one got past him, Lucian fired up the engines at max boost, and Leon used the speed to blow past every other racer in a matter of seconds. Dan was a tough nut to crack because he had more experience on the bike, but Leon simply went all out on the turbo and blew past him to take the win. The entire student body rained curses on him, but that only made him a lot happier until Lucian told him the bike was about to explode. Once it did, he peed his pants as he fell to his demise, but Dan saved him at the last moment. After taking the prize money, he had a very intense argument with Marie over how to share it and gave Jilk a command as payment for substituting him. The command was for him to own up to his mistakes by apologizing to Clarice for the cruel dumping. She was desperate to know why he didn't choose her, so he said it all came down to the love he had for Marie. She stopped Dan from attacking him because she was finally ready to move on. Afterwards, they both thanked Leon, and she told him about what happened with the girls, so he tracked down Olivia to talk about it. She wanted to know if being friends with Angelica could actually work out, and he explained that the large difference in their lifestyle shouldn't stop her from giving what they had a real shot. After thanking him for the advice, she went to her room to think about it some more and decided to go find Angelica. But Carla was waiting outside the door to talk about something. She wanted Olivia to help out with the request she made to Leon, but Olivia was having second thoughts about introducing her in the first place. Just then, Stephanie showed up and shut the door before threatening to make everyone in Olivia's life suffer if she refused to cooperate. She then gave Carla the basic details of her plan, but Olivia interrupted to remind her that both Leon and Angelica were strong, which meant they likely wouldn't respond well to threats. Stephanie scolded her for thinking she knew much about Leon and Angelica because they chose to let her hang around as their plotful pet. Olivia refused to accept Stephanie's ideals on her relationships and said what she had with Leon and Angelica was true, but Stephanie shoved her to the ground and called her a delusional loner. She went on to explain how nobility worked to get the difference in lifestyle deep into Olivia's head. The next day, Leon started packing up to go deal with the sky pirate problem Carla had told him about, but Lucian was curious to know why he was so eager to do it. Leon then reminded him that Olivia was actually the main protagonist of the game and possessed secret powers that could only be unlocked by 3 special artifacts in possession of completely different people in the game world. The Sky Pirates were one of those people, and they had the Holy Necklace, so he had to get it away from them. Lucian's interest peaked when Leon said he knew about Stephanie's plan with Carla because it all happened when he first played the game. Stephanie was a completely evil character, only capable of feeling envious of Marie's growth despite being a commoner. According to the normal way it was all meant to play out, Julius and his boys were the ones meant to save Olivia with their love, but Marie had messed things up, so Leon had to step up. Hearing all that made Lucian curious because it started to sound like Leon was trying so hard to protect Olivia that he was not giving her space to help herself. He and Lucian finished checking out the ship before Carla showed up with Olivia, who was still visibly upset. Before he could figure out why, Carla told him she invited 2 other guys who turned out to be Brad and Greg. On the ship moments later, he had already gotten tired of their faces and asked why they decided to join the trip, so Brad said he was doing it for Marie and his ex-fiancée who was close with Carla, while Leon tried to figure out what was wrong with Olivia. At the time, Angelica was heading to Olivia's room with a gift, but then she saw the vandalism on her door and started banging in case Olivia was hurt inside. The next moment, Stephanie showed up and immediately confessed to making Olivia go on the pirate hunt with Leon so she could easily get hurt. Her plan to scare Angelica failed horribly because she ended up hanging by the shirt while her girls watched in horror. After promising to end her if anything happened to Olivia, Angelica dropped her and Stephanie went to find her. Meanwhile, Julius was trying to convince Mylene that he was strong enough to help fight off the sky pirates, but all she cared about was hearing him talk about Leon, who was playing a game of cards with Greg and Brad at the time. After using the face-swapping cards, Lucian developed to win. Greg brought up the topic of arranged marriage, so Brad told them that his ex-fiancée was actually Stephanie. He admitted to also thinking she was a rotten nutcase and said the main reason behind their engagement was because her family negotiated a truce with an opposing nation that had the Black Knight, a suit that Leon immediately recognized. Greg also talked about his struggles with arranged marriages, and that caused Leon to realize that the rich snobs actually had issues of their own, but then Lucian told him the pirates were closing in, so he told them to get ready. They both didn't understand what was about to happen, so Leon told them to continue playing cards while he started heading out to fight. Moments later, the lead pirate gave them orders to keep Carla safe for tipping them off and saw Leon's suit, but he thought it was too old to be of any use. Meanwhile, Leon had just finished reading up on them and knew they were actually just the basic force for the main sky pirate army. He charged in and easily knocked them all down, while the lead pirate struggled to understand how he could move so fast and kept trying to come up with a battle tactic to gain the advantage. Greg and Brad were also watching as Leon piled up the pirates and realized that real battles were nothing like their cute little duels at the academy. After Leon blew up the barriers protecting their ships, the lead pirate told them all to surrender, so Brad tied them up on the ship, while Greg started to reconsider his hatred for Leon. Carla had just found out and freaked out because the claim that her family needed help was actually a lie she used to set the trap for Leon. Close to sundown, they got to her family's island and were all surrounded by the local forces until Carla's dad recognized Brad. Conrad then apologized for the disrespect, but Brad still wanted to know why it happened in the first place, since they were only trying to help with the sky pirates. Carla immediately put the blame on Olivia and said she was the one who caused the misunderstanding, but Leon defended her and revealed the whole truth. Conrad then asked Carla for an explanation, but she decided to put on the same show your ex did when you caught her cheating. Later on, Leon went to see Olivia and noticed the weirdly pale look on her face, so tried to check for a fever, but she pushed his hand away and asked why he wanted to be her friend. After reminding him that she was still just a commoner unlike Angelica, she asked for the real reason he kept her around, but he couldn't come up with an answer, so she asked if he just wanted her body. He immediately denied it, but she started tearing up and said the only reason why he would randomly choose to be around her is because he actually saw her as nothing but a pet. The intense look she had on her face while tearing up made him realize that she had been thinking about it for a while, so he went out to the deck to ask for Lucian's opinion. The metal Einstein thought it wasn't something to really be bothered by since she was finally letting out her pent-up frustrations, and Leon decided it was for the best because he should have never even gotten involved with her. Lucian then supported his decision and said she was definitely worthless to his cause in life as an NPC, but Leon got pissed and tried to smash his motherboard. Lucian got back up for a second round, but Leon had already sprained his hand, so they decided to use their words instead. Just then, Brad came out to practice his sword skills, so Leon asked why he wasn't perfecting his magic instead, and Brad said they had all actually been training to defeat him. Leon called him stupid and said he was never going to give them a rematch so they could remain losers forever. Brad then got pissed but decided to keep training and said he also wanted to get better for Marie because his good looks were not enough to compete with the other guys. Leon got tired of hearing him praise her so much. One of the ship's robots gave them wooden swords, and Brad wasted no time in displaying the skills he had been perfecting. While struggling to hold him off, Leon asked why he was so focused on a fight he was definitely going to lose, and Brad said it was the only way he could face Marie. That made Leon realize that he was doing the opposite with Olivia. Thankfully, Leon still managed to overpower him, so he promised to keep training and stormed off. Leon then continued his conversation with Lucian and thought about the lengths Julius's BTS was going to just for Marie, who was with Kyle running for her life after a failed attempt to get one of the artifacts behind Olivia's true powers. At the time, Joke was glazing Julius to the max as the slow-brained prince came up with a plan to get disguises so they could sneak out of the palace to find Leon's ship. His master plan turned out to be a stupid request to Mylene requesting costumes for a presentation. Unfortunately, she wasn't nearly as dumb as her son and sent a messenger to deliver the bad news. During breakfast the next morning, Greg asked Leon about the main Sky Pirate army, and that reminded Leon that he still had to get the holy necklace, so he started coming up with a plan to find them. Just then, Lucian told him they were being chased by the pirates, so he looked out to be sure, and the boys immediately asked for spare armor. He tried to stop them, but they admitted to being weak and said they just wanted to help out. At the time, Olivia was crouched in her room thinking about everything Leon had done for her and started to regret blowing up in his face. The next moment, she felt the ship getting rocked by blasts and looked through the window, but thankfully there was a barrier keeping it protected, and Leon was already outside taking out the pirates. He was trying to locate the leader when he suddenly got kicked into the ship's body, and Olivia immediately ran out to help. Two of the robots tried to stop her from leaving, but she unintentionally activated some of her powers and shut them down before running out to the deck. The pirate boss also seemed to have the same idea and tried to take her, but Brad showed up to fight him off and nearly got his insides restructured. Greg then charged in with a sword, but he also got his ass handed back to him while Leon kept dealing with the other pirates. His reaction speed and coordination drastically went down from his usual performance, and he claimed it was just a lack of exercise, but Lucian knew it was something else. Once he told Leon about the pirate boss trying to attack Olivia, he got his head back in the game and flew as fast as he could, but when he got there, Brad and Greg were back on their feet defending her. Scene that reminded Leon that she was originally destined to be protected by them, while he was to be a meaningless character, but he decided to stop playing by the rules and pulled out an axe to get serious. Just as the pirate boss finished off Greg and Brad, he tried to take Olivia again, but Leon cut off his arm and destroyed his armor in an instant. He luckily got out before Leon attacked again, but that was only a warning shot because Leon still planned to send him on a one-way trip to the afterlife. Olivia begged him to stop, but he completely ignored her and kept threatening the pirate boss until he found the holy necklace and picked it up before flicking the one-eyed bald eagle away. Moments later, Olivia saw that Brad was hurting and rushed over to thank him for defending her, but he said it was his duty to keep hotties safe. Bro kept using the fact that he literally got pounded as a way to make himself look good, but her healing powers eventually put him to sleep. Just then, Leon said something about the both of them being the perfect couple and thanked Greg for helping with fight. He then asked for help carrying Brad inside, and they left while Olivia stayed back to cry because Leon had stopped using her nickname. Afterwards, Lucian's robots had gathered everything the pirates had on their ships and asked Leon if he had any plans for all the money, but he was more curious to know if they could link the pirates to Stephanie. After Lucian showed how a bunch of agreement documents linking her to the setup, he felt better knowing justice would be served and said he was actually thinking of starting a harem, but Leon thought it was finally time for him to remove himself from her life and return to being an NPC. The next day, Greg and Brad were given the bounty for taking down the pirates and asked why it wasn't given to Leon instead, so the messenger explained that he had actually named them as the ones responsible for the entire takedown. At the time, he was on his ship with Lucian talking about his letter to Mylene that led to Stephanie getting caught while trying to escape. Lucian was more concerned about the slap he got from Angelica for bringing Olivia to tears, but Leon said the recent turn of events was best so he could easily go back to being a nobody. Later on, Greg and Brad met up with Julius to make a special request so they could repay Leon for his kindness. Afterwards, Lucian gave him a letter showing that he had been promoted by 2 ranks because of the recommendation from Julius. To make matters worse, a second letter from Clarice's family came in with another recommendation that would give him an even higher rank immediately after graduation. His hopes of returning to life as an NPC were dashed again, so Lucian told him to take his time sulking because he had to resume classes soon. The next day, he got a super bike from Clarice's family as a gift for helping her and spent a few minutes arguing about a name for it with Lucian. Later on, Daniel and Raymond struggled to understand why he was so against the promotions, despite the fact that it would give him a better chance with the girls. The guys told him to cheer up because the school trip would be a chance for him to find new baddies, and that reminded him that it was a yearly event involving all the students. They would get sent to different islands in groups, and he was unfortunately going to be on the same one with Chris, Olivia, and Angelica, who were still avoiding him. Afterwards, he was on the ship with the other students heading to their designated island and made plans to test out the new bike, while Angelica was making small talk and Olivia was by herself as usual. Leon hoped the girls on the trip didn't all hate his guts and would be willing to give him a chance, but Chris showed up and stole them all away with his charms. Leon was already used to getting disappointed, so he decided to focus on Olivia instead and hoped things would start getting better for her since he was no longer interrupting the natural course of events. Moments later, the 2 girls who once followed Angelica decided to abandon her and dropped some sort of smoke signal right as the ship got to their island. Afterwards, Olivia went to and thought about what life would look like if Leon and Angelica were still with her, but her newfound loneliness was quick to erase the delusions. She then found a temple and went in to pray for a better life, but Leon was already there about to do the same thing. Angelica also seemed to have the same idea, and a shrine attendant named Miko could sense the awkward energy between them, so she gave them directions for the prayer ceremony. And they all took a couple of minutes to pray like civilized people. When they finished, Miko gave Leon 3 charms, and he got extremely excited to finally have them because he had apparently bribed a couple of executives to get on the island, because it was the one known to have charms. Unfortunately, Miko said he had to share them, and the girls actually said they didn't need any. But his nice guy syndrome took over, so he gave them each a piece and ended up with the battle charm known for amplifying skills and weapons used in combat. Days later, they started heading back, and Leon was out on the deck talking to Luxian about Marie, because she was likely also going to be looking for Olivia's artifacts to replace her as the antagonist. Just then, Chris came out to ask for a sword fight similar to what he did with Brad, but Leon explained that Brad chose a sword fight because he wasn't actually good at it. But then the ship's alarm system started going crazy. The next moment, an army of monsters charged towards them with an insignia that Leon recognized from the nation of Phanos. Luxian asked for orders, so Leon told him to summon their ship and weapons right before a monster ship showed up from the opposite direction with Princess Gertrude commanding it. Olivia came out with Angelica, who immediately recognized the princess, and they all listened as she used a hologram projector to declare war against the kingdom. In exchange for sparing their lives, she demanded a total surrender and gave them time to think about it. While Angelica was trying to figure out why she was attacking them, Leon was confused because her attack was a lot earlier than the natural course of events when he played the game. Moments later, a Disney-styled musketeer boarded the ship with a small army to arrest all the nobles and anyone ranked from a baron above. The other students, slaves, and regular knights were to be left on the ship, but Angelica suddenly offered herself up in exchange for everyone else. Garrett didn't expect to see the daughter of a duke on board and accepted her offer, but both Olivia and Leon tried to stop her. After the boys held him down, Garrett used his head as a foot scrub and told all the male nobles to take turns beating him up. They wasted no time kicking his guts in, and Angelica kept begging them to stop, but even after Garrett told her to call him daddy, he told the boys to continue with the beating. Just as he turned to leave with Angelica, Olivia also tried to stop her and nearly lost her tooth to a slap. Leon started struggling to get free so he could stop them, but he got knocked out while Angelica was taken straight to Gertrude. After exchanging greetings, Angelica told her that a war would be pointless since the kingdom's forces were far greater, but Gertrude had a lot of faith in her monsters. Garrett then suggested focusing on their hostage situation instead, and that got Angelica pissed because she thought her surrender would be enough to spare everyone else. After reminding her that they all practically betrayed her, she said they were still going to attack the ship to see if her mates were actually capable of acting like nobles. At the time, Olivia was outside Leon's cell crying because she felt useless, but then Chris showed up to tell them about Gertrude's decision to destroy the entire student body. He wanted Leon's help holding off her monster army long enough for everyone else to escape, but Leon refused to help the same people that were too spineless to stand up for one of their own. Just as Chris turned to leave, he stopped him and said he would only help if the other students agreed to join the fight. Moments later, Chris gathered them all together to make a speech about teamwork and bravery, but they responded by threatening to toss him off the ship for acting like he was any better. The next moment, Leon caught their attention with a shotgun and reminded them that his status and recent promotions gave him the right to order them all into battle. They still refused and kept yelling at him for even suggesting it, but he said their attitude was not a surprise since they were all pathetic wannabes who were only known for boasting about the exploits of their heroic parents. A noble named Roseblade hated hearing his insults and walked up to demand respect because of her family's influence, but Leon kept talking his shit and said she was only relevant because his dad actually managed to do something with his life. His trash talk eventually got to her head, so she and the rest of their students activated their powers and promised to deal with him after facing off against Gertrude's army. Just then, Roseblade started acting fruity from the effects of Leon's aura, so he immediately went to the hangar and asked Chris about the girls that signaled Gertrude. After he said they had been arrested, Leon promised to rip Garrett's mustache off and turned to leave, but Olivia held him back to wish him luck and begged him to save Angelica. Just as he got on the bike and took off, Gertrude used a magic flute to turn the monsters on him. He managed to get past the monsters outside the hangar and made Luxian activate the blasters he installed to take out a lot more while charging straight for the monster ship. Bart got inspired by Leon's suicide mission and started giving out orders, while Roseblade mobilized the girls and regular magic users. After Bart took out the monsters closest to the ship, the regular magic users started setting up barriers to keep the ship protected. Just then, Gertrude saw Leon heading towards her ship, so she called for her flute, while Angelica went to the window to be sure it was him. After using her flute to send more monsters against the students, Gertrude told Angelica that their defeat was inevitable. Angelica then reminded her that they were all descendants of powerful adventurers, and the fact that Leon was leading the offense definitely helped matters. Garrett still thought it was futile and revealed his plan to blast the students with cannon ships that were slowly advancing, with cover from the monster army. Just then, Lucian gave Leon an update on his classmates, but he already knew that they were strong enough to handle themselves and decided to focus on getting to Angelica. While the boys were easily taking down Gertrude's monsters, so Brad took his unit further out to deal with stronger monsters. Olivia used her healing magic to help those within. They all started freaking out because their barriers were not strong enough to block such high-level blasts, but it was already too late to come up with a new solution. Just as the battleships shot out cannons, Olivia ran to the center of the deck and unleashed a god-level barrier magic that shielded them all at the last moment. And Leon was happy to see that all her studying had paid off. Lucian then plotted a new course to help Leon get to Angelica faster, but it involved diving into the monster ship's mouth and dodging the barrage of blasters stuffed into its throat. The blasts caused huge turbulence and caused Angelica to cuss at Gertrude for having an extremely weird taste in ships, but she was proud of the decision to strap her ship to a mega monster. Garrett then said the turbulence was definitely from Leon going down the monster's digestive system. Was when he blasted in through the ground and shot the guards protecting Gertrude. He then knocked Garrett unconscious and demanded Gertrude's flute and total surrender. So he shot the maid as a warning and made her give up the flute. After analyzing and telling Leon that it was a replica, while Angelica went to get the real flute from Gertrude's maid and saw that Leon was using rubber bullets. After tying up Gertrude, the monster strapped to her ship became pixie dust, so Leon took off with her and Angelica to avoid her army. He kept roasting them for not being able to stop him, and that reminded Angelica of all the times his cocky attitude got him out of situations, so she hugged and thanked him for saving her with the same attitude. Moments later, Garrett woke up and realized what Leon had done to his hideous mustache, so he started cooking up a new scheme. Once Leon got to the ship, Brad told him the enemy ships had stopped attacking, so Leon said they just had to keep Gertrude hostage and use that to get back safely. Just then, they heard Garrett telling the battleships and their soldiers that Gertrude had been clapped, so they could go all out against Leon. Gertrude approved of the plan and claimed it was an honor to sacrifice herself for the cause before disabling the magic control over her monsters. With the magic neutralized, they would instinctively try to attack the person behind their hypnosis. One look at Olivia made it clear that something else had to be done, so Leon got on his bike with Luxian and took off to destroy as many monsters as they could. Angelica, on the other hand, charm she got from Leon suddenly gave her the ability to control flames, so she used them to take out the monsters getting close to the ship. After destroying one that got way too close to Olivia, she rushed over to check on her. Olivia was upset over losing strength so soon and said she had only wanted to be useful so Angelica and Leon would see her as an actual friend, but Angelica scolded her for thinking they were not actually friends and gave her a hug. Their moment together suddenly got interrupted by a blast that rocked the ship, causing Angelica to hang onto the edge for dear life. After wishing she had been a little better to everyone in her life, she accepted her fate and slipped, but Olivia grabbed her hand to pull her back up. She said it was pointless because Olivia was still too weak, but Olivia refused to give up on her and kept yapping about their precious relationship instead of just pulling her up. When another blast tossed Angelica back on board while she was thrown off. Angelica was horrified and could only watch as she kept falling, but Leon was close and dived in to save her. Olivia already knew he would show up and kept smiling like she wasn't about to drop into the Pacific until he got close enough to catch her. She then took a moment to enjoy being in his arms and started yelling at him for using her first name like they were nothing to each other. Leon told her to focus on finding someone better to be with instead of staying around him, but she refused to even consider it. He then listed out Julius's crew to remind her that he wasn't even close to being good looking, but she said it didn't matter. He asked why she even thought he was special, so she straight up confessed to being in love with him and left him too stunned to say anything else. As they started heading back up, he called her by the name she loved and brought back her smile. After she reunited with Angelica, his ship finally arrived, and Lucian armed its blasters to reduce Garrett's fleet. Leon then deployed his suit and got strapped in to finish the battle. Seeing that, Garrett's assistant suggested retreating, but the loss of his mustache made that choice impossible for him. Just then, a low-budget deathstroke known as Vandal the Dark Knight showed up and gave Garrett hope. While Leon was tearing through what was left of Garrett's forces, Lucian deployed transport ships to evacuate his classmates. The next moment, Vandal got to the roof, and Leon immediately recognized him as the Black Knight that gave him a hard time when he first played the game. Even Gertrude was shocked to see him, but Olivia had never heard of the Dark Knight before, so Angelica explained that he was a feared warrior who once took down a fleet of warships on his own. Leon deployed his attack drones and hoped they would make a dent or find a weakness in Vandal's armor, but he easily destroyed them and clashed swords with Leon. He then tried to use his blaster, but Vandal kicked it away and called him stupid for thinking his flashy moves could match years of experience. Leon then put his weapons away and decided to use his hands, but one of Garrett's soldiers tried to take him down and ended up being the lab rat Leon used to test out the hand blaster. Before he could get his focus back on Vandal, the sneaky old geezer snuck behind him and sliced through his armor's chest plate to deactivate Leon's visual. Chris noticed the attack and thought he would have to stop Vandal on his own, but Leon pushed him back and used the cut in his armor to see. Lucian suggested using the ship's main weapon, but Leon forbade it for some reason right before he tried using another blast against Vandal. Once again, he dodged and tried to land another surprise attack, but Leon got closer to stop the hit at half strength and kept pressing in with his armor. Leon asked Vandal why he wasn't in a home for the elderly sipping coffee, but Vandal's ancient mind could only remember that fighting was his purpose. Leon's dream to clap cheeks made a lot more sense and gave him enough motivation to charge in for another attack, but Vandal used the light against him and stabbed right through his armor. He then opened the hatch, and Lucian took over to hold Vandal's armor in place so Leon could demand a surrender at gunpoint. Just then, Garrett shot out a signal flare for his last attempt at victory, and it summoned a brand new army of monsters that littered the sky. Vandal thought it was finally over for Leon, but he still had a trick up his sleeve and gave Lucian the order. In an instant, satellites were activated, and a rain of lasers destroyed every monster Garrett summoned. Leon then decided to let Vandal have his freedom so he could report back to his superiors. He also decided to take his sword as a souvenir. Vandal gave him a warning about his cocky attitude, but Leon told him to try again in a scenario where he wasn't being held hostage by a student after a failed attempt to hijack a simple school trip. Afterwards, Garrett begged for his forgiveness, but Leon said there was nothing to beg for as long as he could take absolutely everything Garrett came with. Later on, the worker robots stopped him from going into his room, which confused him until Lucian told him the girls were inside. After seeing them both asleep in plotful night dresses, he decided to keep his demons on lock so Angelica's dad wouldn't rip out his sausage. Just then, Chris showed up to talk to him, but he just wanted to say that he would keep training until the day they would be on the same level. The next day, Angelica met up with her brother to figure out why he sent Gertrude to an academy abroad instead of putting her in jail. But all he wanted to talk about was why Leon still had trouble finding a wife despite all his achievements. Later, she met up with Leon and Olivia for tea, and used the opportunity to ask him why he decided to give all the credit to Chris. After Leon explained that it was the best way to get him back in his family's good graces, the girls commended him on actually being nice, and finally asked about Lucian. The floating orb then introduced himself to them and tried to explain his purpose. Leon kept teasing him about it until he said something about Julius and his group cooking up a new plan. The plan turned out to be a Labus transformer suit they made out of parts from their individual suits to finally take Leon down. Murray didn't really seem shocked by their random stupidity until Julius said the whole thing cost them $500,000. Moments later, Leon was in his suit chatting with Lucian while Julius and the others gave Greg a pep talk before sending him off to do what they were too scared to even think of. Leon easily dodged his first attack and tried to start the usual trash talk, but then Lucian told him that Greg's was about to get baked because the suit's core was already reaching its breaking point. Leon tried to warn him, but he was too busy unleashing every skill he had learned so far, so Leon told the referee instead. After the referee dismissed him, Lucian told him the only way was to completely destroy the suit, which would mean going against his original plan to throw the fight so the boys could stop feeling insecure. With no option left, Leon genuinely got sad about having to win again and blew the suit to pieces of shrapnel. The next day, he was still upset about it and asked his friends why he was the only one in an official outfit. So they realized that he didn't know what was about to happen and said he was to be rewarded for capturing Gertrude. Just then, Angelica showed up and dragged him to the award ceremony where the royal family was waiting. After Lucas gave him the award signifying his rise to the position of Viscount, the entire academy applauded him for his efforts. When the ceremony ended, he went out and found Olivia, who was waiting to say that she didn't mind giving him time to figure out whether or not he also loved her. She then ran ahead to meet Angelica, and Lucian used the opportunity to explain how similar he was to Marie in the sense that they both got isekai'd into the game world and changed the rules to get harems with the hottest characters. Will Lucian settle for Olivia's love alone, or does he have what it takes to become the greatest harem lord of the game world? That is it for this video. Leave a thumbs up if you liked it and subscribe to the channel for similar content. And as always, thanks for watching.